So, did you drink your credit score into the crapper? Well, make sure to watch this video. Hello my friends, and welcome to The Simple Sober Life. I am Joshua, and I help others make simple changes to create a life of awesome. Welcome my friends, and thank you so much for joining me. So I don't know about you, but my credit score after many years of drinking just fell into the toilet. And it was mainly because whenever I would drink, I would lose all ambition about money and any financial responsibilities that I had. I stopped paying all my bills. I'd go on spending sprees, just hitting that credit card, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. I'd buy weekend trips, I'd buy jewelry, I'd buy expensive food, and of course, booze. So now I have to pay the repercussions. But I've got a couple of tips that will help you boost that credit score really quickly. First and foremost, if you're able to do it, obviously paying off the debts is the responsible thing to do. And none of us like to be responsible. I know that, I understand that, believe me, I've lived it. But if you're able to pay some of the debts, especially any of the bad ones, start with the smallest one first. You know, I have a couple of debts that are just a couple of $100 each. And so in paying off those debts one by one, my credit score is increasing really pretty rapidly. You know, it could increase between 25 and 30 points just by paying off, one of those small debts. So, start with the small ones and then kind of work your way up to any of the bigger ones. Now, one thing that you will definitely want to do is to check your credit report on a regular basis, especially check it for inaccuracies. There may be debts on there that should have fallen off by now. There may be debts on there that you've already paid. There may be debts that you have no idea what they are. And so make sure to check that credit report and make sure everything on there is legit. If you use a service like Credit Karma or Experian or any of the other credit reporting agencies, you can actually go through. It'll give you an itemized list of what the debts are that you owe, what your credit report looks like, and things like that. And if there's something wrong with it, if there's an inaccuracy, you can actually go through and dispute it right there. It's a really simple process. You can do it right there online. Just note the dispute that you want to make, and then just type out, exactly why this debt should not be there. And sometimes they'll notice that it is in fact an error, take it off your credit report, and boost that score right on up. Another thing that you can do is watch out for the 7-year fall off. Now, there are a lot of stipulations behind this, but after 7 years, a bad debt should fall off of your credit report. Now, like I said, there are some stipulations. If the debt is resold to another creditor, another collection agency, then I'm pretty sure that 7-year period starts all over. Also, if the 7 years is almost up, do not call that credit agency. If you call that credit agency and that time is almost up, it could restart the clock all over again. So if you've got a bad debt that's almost 7 years in the past, forget about it. Hopefully it'll fall off, and after it falls off, then your credit score will boost up. And speaking of calling credit agencies, once a debt has fallen into a collection, it's gone bad, those debt collectors actually pay pennies on the dollar for those debts. So if you owe like $1,000 to Visa and it goes into collections, after so long, Visa will just want to get it off their plate because they've got other things to do, and they will sell it to a collection agency. And that collection agency will pay, a fraction of that $1,000. And then Visa will write off the rest. And so because that debt collection agency paid a fraction of what it is, you have a lot of negotiating power. You can usually settle the debt for maybe half of the original cost. So if you owed Visa $1,000 and it was picked up by a debt collector, you could probably settle that debt for like $500. Now there are, of course, some tax stipulations to that. If it's a large amount, you may have to report the savings portion of it to the IRS as income. So, but what you also need to do is when you're negotiating with that collection agency, make sure that they mark it onto your report as paid in full. And they can do this. They can mark it as paid in full rather than, negotiated. The negotiated one doesn't look as good on your credit report as paid in full. And so just a couple of key tips when you're negotiating with those debt collectors. Also, when you're looking at your credit report and you want to boost it up, you want to be really conscientious of your debt utilization ratio. So what this is it's the amount of debt that you have versus how much of that, it's the amount of credit that you have versus how much debt you've put on there. So if you have a credit limit of, let's say, $10,000 and you have spent $7,500 of it, you've got a ratio of 75%. The magic number for debt utilization is 30%. You want to be under 30%. And you want to strive to do that as soon as possible, either by paying off those debts, negotiating down, disputing them, getting them to fall off. Get your number under 30%, and that will jack up your credit rating like crazy. Another way that you can jack up your credit rating and also utilize that debt utilization ratio is increasing your credit. And you can do this simply by getting a loan, opening up a new credit card, because the more credit that you have, that ratio will actually go down because you're not utilizing as much of the full amount. And then, of course, my friends, make sure to stay on top of that credit reporting. If you suspect fraud or anything, make sure to get in contact with the credit cards as soon as possible, because if someone gets a hold of your information and starts jacking up all of these bills and all of these debts, and you know what, you are unfortunately responsible for that. And I personally have never gone through, that's not true. I've gone through a very minor issue with fraud. But, I've spoken with a number of different people who have had their entire lives turned upside down because someone was able to get a hold of their information, jack up, $30,000, $40,000 in debt, and they were ultimately responsible for it. It's such a headache, and it takes years to get that straightened up. So make sure to keep a close eye on your credit report, especially if you are planning on making any big ticket items. Buying a house, buying a car, things like that. Another tip that kind of popped in my head, speaking of buying a house or buying a car, is limiting the number of hard inquiries. So you've got soft inquiries and you've got hard inquiries. A hard inquiry takes a really deep dive into your credit report, pulls that your full credit report, and that will actually ding your rating down. Recently, I went to a dealership and they did 14 hard credit pulls on my report. And so it went bang, 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 bang. And so my credit report, all of a sudden I was checking Credit Karma, and my score was down like 15 points. I'm like, what the heck? And so I looked into it, and that's all I saw: hard inquiry, hard inquiry, hard inquiry. And so be very, very careful about those hard inquiries, rather than, like a soft inquiry for like some other minor purchases. Just be aware of that, my friends. I hope you got value out of this. If you did, please make sure to comment down below. I would love to hear if you have any tips on jacking up your credit score. I'm sorry if I'm a little stuffed up. I'm starting to battle some chest congestion and everything, it's that time of year. But I hope you have a fantastic evening, my friends. Give this video a big old thumbs up and subscribe. I will see you later, my friends. Take care.